Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. In my first lecture about Hegel, I have already discussed about the pattern of history and the dialectic in history. Now, in second lecture about Hegel, I explain you Hegel's views about the nation in history, the individual and the state and concept of freedom, the state and constitutionalism, and international relations and international law. First of all, I explain you about his most important theory, the nation in history. We have seen that in Hegel's theory, progress results from the conflict of ideas. As earlier I explained you that Hegel was an idealist thinker. For him, ideas are far more important than material things. He believes that ideas move the material world. Ideas have an independent existence, independent that is from the thinking of men. They are not merely manufactured by men for their own purposes. Material things, forces, institutions, cultures are merely reflections of ideas, or more properly, of the idea at a given time. But the idea must have a vehicle on which to ride. The progress of idea through history, Hegel says, is carried by states. States are the material manifestations of ideas. The basis of the state is the power of reason and will. Each state in history carries the idea for a time and made its contribution to the development of the idea. Each state differs in principle from its final stage. Each stage represents an advancement of the spirit and development of the idea. The various attributes of each dominant nation in his expression, the contribution of that nation to the advance of the spirit. Many things are involved here, for example, law, morals, constitutions, forms of government, arts, sciences, technology, social organizations, and many more. All these too must be understood according to the special principle of the people of the nation. Hegel further explains that a nation is at its best when it is engaged in war and revolution. This view grows out of Hegel's thesis that progress results from conflict. War and revolution are the material evidences of the clash of ideas, of the opposition of theses and antitheses. War is that stage in the history of the nation when a new and higher synthesis is emerging. When the process is complete, the nation has made its contributions to the progress of the idea in history. A new nation will replace the old as the carrier of the idea. The cycle will repeat itself. The old nation may suffer, but its suffering is the price of its progress. The world as a whole will benefit from this progress because the valid elements of their civilizations have been incorporated into the new nation which now carries the idea. This philosophy gives meaning to one of the Hegel's most famous statements found in the preface to his book, The Philosophy of Right and Law. The rationale is actual and the actual is rationale. In short, Hegel justifies on the same ground both change and that which exists, and that which exists is rational because it contains elements of the idea that have developed through the dialectical process in history. After a detailed discussion, we can find out that Hegel wanted the wisdom of the past to be a part of future German development. There was no doubt in Hegel's mind that changes would have to occur in Germany before that country could assume its full responsibility as a carrier of the idea. Germany, he was convinced, had to achieve the national form consolidated and unified, which had already been attained by England, France, and Spain. Now we examine next most important views of Hegel about the individual and the state and the concept of freedom. Hegel highlighted that individual and his relationship with the state always remained a central in the state-individual relations. Not only in Hegel's views, but all thinkers emphasize individual and state relationship because in every period of history this relationship remained a most important relationship. Individual lives under the subordination of the state. Hegel explains that the end of this purpose of man is the realization of freedom. A study of history reveals that a plan to achieve this end exists and that it is advanced through the operation of the dialectic. When they subordinate themselves to the state and its institutions, then they are free. This is Hegel's definition of freedom. Hegel's concept of freedom leads to the justification of state absolutism. His emphasis is that individual can enjoy the maximum pleasure and freedom within the orbit of state. The state is embodiment of reason and therefore of freedom. He always gives preference to state over individual. Hegel further explains the state is necessary to the march of the word of spirit and is a means to that end. So, the individual is a means to the end of the state which serves that purpose. The state was the highest embodiment of freedom. Hegel's conception of freedom was based upon the old Greek notion of an individual finding his true personality and his freedom in the state. Hegel greatly influenced by the thought of different other English idealist thinkers. Next important theory of Hegel is about the state and constitutionalism. The requirement of the state, Hegel proceeds to a consideration of the features of a suitable constitutional monarchy. Hegel says that the constitution of every state was the result of historical evolution. According to him, governmental institutions always play their significant role in any state. He strongly supported constitutional monarchy as a best form of government. In general, England provides the model for Hegel's constitutional system. The monarch of a constitutional monarchy, he says, should be primarily a symbol rather than a possessor of power. He is representative of sovereignty, which is found in the organic whole of the people, but which for practical reasons cannot be exercised by them. The monarch's power should not be arbitrary. The well-ordered state is based upon the law and the law is supreme. He also opposed the theory of separation of powers on the basis that state was a moral organism functioning as a whole. Each organ is not opposed to the other, but each of them work as a part of the whole. Hegel also highlighted significance of public opinion in a state system. He said there can be no public opinion without some freedom of expression. Hegel considers the problems growing out of freedom of speech and press. The essential basis of popular opinion may contain elements of validity. So, Hegel gave importance of public opinion in state system. Next most important views of Hegel's are about the importance of international relations and international law. Hegel rejects the proposition that relationships among states can be based upon a system of international law. Hegel does not oppose good relation of states, cooperation among states, but he says that states always prefer their national interest in this regard. Agreements, international relations, different treaties must rest upon the goodwill of the sovereign states, and where these interest not obtained and states fails, war is the only recourse. In short, Hegel is saying that although there can be no true international law, certain conventions are valuable and should be observed. During this discussion, we can very easily find out that Hegel gave importance of international relations and international law, good relation of states, but his basic emphasis is about the national interest, protection of national interest of the states, and he clearly says that international relations, international law, foreign policies, all these aspects failed when states preferred their national interest, and due to these reasons he never gave very importance to international law, because he thought that international law cannot compel the states to fulfill their obligation in their international relations. After examining different theories of Hegel, now we conclude this topic. After examining different aspects of his philosophy, it is difficult to analyze and classify Hegel's political thought. Basic purpose of Hegel's philosophy was for the unification and glorification of German nation. His influence on later political philosophy can be traced through the fascism, Nazism, and communism. Hegel is regarded as one of the greatest philosophers of the world. George Sabine described his philosophy an attempt as a complete reconstruction of modern thought. He made three major contributions to the history of political thought. Number one, the famous dialectic methods. Number two, the theory of national state. Number three, the conception of progress. All these three aspects remained dominant in his philosophy and also regarded his major contributions. After his death, his influence increased, particularly in Germany and other countries of the world. Italy's political thought was also influenced by Hegelianism. In England, its influence was on the Oxford Idealist School was established under the leadership of T.H. Green. In England, Hegel inspired the late 19th century's idealism, while in the US, his disciples dominating most university departments of philosophy. Karl Marx also took his philosophy very seriously, particularly Hegel's dialectical method. Finally, we must consider Hegel's ideas related to the freedom and national development of Germany. In Germany, Hegel's influence effectively prevailed and remained unexcelled till today. So that is the end of our present discussion.